Welcome to Dead Man Talking. Tonight's show is a 3 short story compilation that's set to send shivers down your spine. As ever, please do let us know what you thought down below in the comments box. Please do like and share. It really does help build the channel and our community further. And why not hashtag TeamFEAR. And so, with that aside, let's get into tonight's first story, simply entitled The Bunker. Let's get straight into that. Tim Parker is a typical high school senior, but one day that all changed. On June 13th, 2018, I was hanging out with my friends Tom and Larry, as usual. We were driving around a few miles outside of town when we saw an old abandoned bunker in the forest. And being the curious teenagers we were, we decided to go home to get flashlights and things, and come back to explore it. Returning to the bunker, we were excited to discover what was inside. The thick metal door of the bunker was partially rusted, making it difficult for us to open, but after a few moments of struggling, we finally managed to open it and make our way inside. The inside of the bunker was dark and decrepit, making it give off a menacing and unwelcoming vibe. As we explored the bunker, I kept getting a feeling that I was being watched. However, I chose to ignore it and continue exploring. When we reached the first 3 rooms, the 3 of us decided to split up and search each room ourselves. I chose to search around a room that resembles a testing room. Searching the area for about 5 minutes, I finally found some documents labelled Chemical M Research. Proud with my find, I decided to regroup with Larry, who was in the adjoining storage room next to the room that I was in, and show him what I had found. As I approached him, eager to show him my find, we jumped at the sudden sound of Tom wailing in terror, followed by a monstrous screech. Larry and I spared no time in rushing to go help our friend. Reaching the source of Tom's wailing cry, Larry and I were shocked to find only an empty canteen. Exchanging glances of confusion, we decided to search the room for clues as to what happened to our friend. As I was searching the north side of the room, I heard Larry call out to me. "Tim, over here," he called to me in an urgent tone. Rushing to see what he had discovered, I went over to where he was hunched over, examining the floor. "What is it? You find something?" I questioned. Larry motioned to the floor. "Look, a trail." I squat down and examined the trail of bright, crimson liquid leading out of the south door of the room. "You don't think this is..." I started. "Oh, if it is, I sure hope it's not from Tom," Larry replied. I nodded and we began following the trail. We continued following the trail for a while when we heard Tom scream again. Again we rushed to the source, and this time we find him. However, it was in a much worse condition than we had hoped. Tom was sat against the wall, leaning slightly forward, with multiple large gashes on his arms and legs. His tibia had a compound fracture and was protruding from his leg. As I sat there, unable to move, Larry, wearing the face of a man who was mentally broke, slowly walked over to Tom's body and placed his hand on Tom's shoulder. Tom fell to the floor, on his side, showing his mangled face and torso. He was missing his eyes, and his lower jaw and throat looked like they were torn off. His body also had large gashes across his waist that spilled his internal organs onto the floor. And seeing Tom now, I knew we had to get out of this bunker, but we were too late. Larry and I quickly collected ourselves and began sprinting to the exit, and just as we were about to reach the canteen, a large, monstrous figure walked past the doorway, causing us to stop in our tracks. Larry and I exchanged worried glances and began slowly backing away. However, in my terror, I ended up tripping over my own feet and falling backwards with an echoing thud. Larry rushed to help me to my feet, but it was too late. The creature was standing in the canteen doorway. I could just make out its shape in the darkness. It had small, sky-blue cat-like eyes. They were actually quite entrancing and beautiful. A large 8-foot frame and a werewolf appearance. Seeing the two of us standing in front of it, the beast snarled, showing tens of large serrated teeth, as well as the chunks of flesh from the most recent meal. The werewolf took a thundering step towards us, creating a large dent in the metallic flooring of the bunker, and howled. Clutching my ears so I don't go deaf from the ear-splitting sound, I turn to Larry and mouth the word, "Run!" Larry nods in response and we sprint away from the now pursuing beast. Turning a sharp corner, we hide in the nearest room, hoping we've escaped. The werewolf tries to make the same turn but slips on the metallic floor due to its dog-like paws. And when it gets back to it, it seems like it's lost its track of us as it continues past the room we've hidden in. After about a minute, I turn to Larry and whisper, "I don't think that's the thing that killed Tom." "I don't think so either," Larry agrees. "That howl we heard after Tom's first scream sounded much different." As we continued discussing about how we would escape, we heard the werewolf howl once again. "Is it coming back?" "I don't think so," I answered. "That sounded like it was hurt or something." We sat there in silence for a while after that, just waiting, anticipating what will happen next. However, no matter how much waiting and anticipating we did, nothing could have prepared us for what we saw next. The sound of the groaning metal floor, along with the clacking of claws on the floor and screeching from the metal walls as it dragged its claws across them as it walked through the hallway, showed something was approaching and would be here in seconds. The sound grew closer until it was right in the doorway. The new creature stepped into the room. I had a grotesque appearance with a rat-like face, long scaly arms and 6-inch claws on each hand. Short but muscular legs and a long crocodile-like tail and a back covered in long spines. As I stare at the creature, I discover that it is holding something in its left hand. Squinting to make out what it is, I realize that it's the decapitated head and spine of the werewolf creature. Seems like this thing went full predator on the werewolf. The rat crocodile thing throws the decapitated head against the wall and roars. Hearing the roar, I realize that this is the thing that killed Tom, and I have a feeling that it knows we're here. I'm proving my theory. The creature grabs the door to the lockers Larry and I are hiding in and tears them off with ease. And we are now face to face with this horrific, effluvious face with orange eyes filled with hatred and killing intent, and snarls and raises its left arm to strike. As the creature swings its arm, Larry pushes me out from the locker, allowing me to avoid certain death. However, Larry was not as lucky, and is impaled by the creature and lifted into the air. Larry turns to me, coughing up blood, and says, "Forget about me. I'm already dead. Just run." I turn away, tears in my eyes, and start running. Before I can even make it 3 feet, I'm hit with a sudden, sharp pain in my right leg and turn to see the creature piercing it with a claw of its right hand. The creature then wraps its tail around my legs, pulling me to the ground, and attempts to stab me in my stomach. Despite my futile struggle, the creature easily cuts 2 inches into my abdomen, causing me to scream in pain. Larry, clinging to life by a thread and still held by the creature, punches the creature, getting its attention. The beast howls in rage and throws Larry against the wall, rips its claw out from my abdomen, and goes to where Larry is slumped against the wall. After getting the creature's attention, Larry motions for me to go. I quickly get to my feet, which shoots immense pain throughout my body, and I leave the room. As I'm running away, I hear Larry cry in pain, and then silence. knowing the creature is probably hunting me down right now, I find a room that appears to be a panic room with no windows, a reinforced door and multiple other safety features. I quickly enter the room and slam the door, and just as I see that murdering monstrosity turn the corner and lock it, I sit down in the corner of the room and start writing this. I probably won't live much longer. I can feel the life draining from my body. And even if I was able to live through this wound, that monster has been pounding on the door. The door should come down any. The Wolfman of Black Lake. Let's get straight into that. Dylan lived a quiet life in Black Lake, Alaska. The town was named after a small lake there, had a high concentration of algae, and was completely surrounded by trees that cast their shadows upon the lake, unless the sun was at its zenith. These two factors caused the small lake to have a dark tint, which led to the choice of name, Black Lake. His closest neighbour was about 3 miles away, and that's how he liked it. Waking up in the morning to see the snow clinging to the thick forest of trees was his paradise. And sure, he encountered a bear here or there, or maybe the occasional wolf, but the truth was that if he left the wildlife alone, then they would do the same. Except for the deer. They'd come in like a swarm of bees and crap all over the place. He tried using a repellent and would make loud ruckuses to scare them away, but nothing seemed to work. That's why he got his 2 boys. They were 2 Canadian Eskimo dogs called Bruce and Port. He raised them from puppies and they were loyal dogs and, honestly, Dylan's best friends. They were territorial and did a great job keeping those damn deer away. They even seemed to keep the bears and wolves away too. They weren't scared easily and were as hard-headed as they were big, always ready to charge out into the trees. They were first to clue Dylan into the fact that something was very wrong. One night, he heard a rustling coming from his trash cans outside. He whistled for Bruce and Port to chase off whatever critter was making the noise. But the dogs, they wouldn't listen. They both stood there at the open door, shifting anxiously and whining. And for the first time in 5 years, something was scaring them. Dylan wasn't an idiot. If something was scaring Bruce and Port, he wasn't about to investigate what it could be. He shut the door and locked the door. He made sure he had his shotgun nearby, and he didn't go to sleep. The sounds from the cans were becoming louder and louder. He only left the house when the sun was up in the sky and the sounds had stopped hours prior. He couldn't believe what his eyes were seeing. His metal trash cans were crushed as if something strong had wrapped it in its arms all the way around him and squeezed. Trash was everywhere, torn and ripped. At first, Dylan assumed it must have been a massive bear searching for scraps. It wasn't until he saw the paw prints that his bear theory went out the window. He had seen prints from wolves many times, and they were easy to recognize. These prints, though, they were huge, easily 3 times the size of any print he'd ever seen. That wasn't what scared him the most. It was apparent that whatever animal had made these had been walking on their hind legs. Dylan didn't know what it was, but also didn't want to find out. Whatever it was, hopefully it had searched for scraps and hadn't found any, and then went on its way. That next night, Dylan realized that his hopes were dashed. Around 1 a.m, a great howling startled Dylan awake. The dogs jumped off the edge of the bed, only to quickly hide underneath it. The sound was unlike any animal he had ever heard, hoarse and echoing. Even the crickets stopped chirping, as if scared to disrupt the great noise. And what was worse was that the sounds, they weren't far off. Suddenly, his front door started to shake wildly. Dylan grabbed his gun, sure that something was about to burst through the door. Loud scratching sounds could be heard from the other side of the door. The creaking of the thick wood was loud, and it seemed that the door would give way at any second, and then nothing. The shaking and creaking stopped just as suddenly as it had started. The howling could be heard coming farther and farther away until it was gone. The crickets played their song again as if nothing had happened, and Dylan didn't sleep that night either. He sat up in his rocking chair with his shotgun in his lap, and Bruce and Port slowly left their hiding spot and lied down at his feet. He didn't open that door until it was time to let them out for the day. And their fear had seemed to disappear, and they ran out into the snow. And Dylan walked to the front door, and scratch marks, giant, deep scratch marks, were strewn all over. Whatever it was that had left them could have easily broken down the door. So, why didn't it? Dylan walked back inside and slumped on his chair. The scary stories that his grandmother had told his brother Eddie and him as children had been racing back into his mind ever since he had seen the paw prints. He had tried to be logical. After all, he was an adult. He shouldn't be scared of wives' tales made to purposely scare children into obeying. But still, logic was failing him, and his grandmother's stories were fitting too well into this equation. "Never leave into the woods after dark," she would say. "He isn't a werewolf. There is no human in him, though, and some of his physical features are quite human-like. Maybe years and years ago he was a man, but no one knows for sure. What is known is that the Wolfman is over 10 feet tall, and with coarse fur covering his body. His face, feet, legs, and hands all resemble a wolf's. But he is not a wolf. Wolves are not evil. Wolves don't like to play with their food. Wolves are just animals trying to survive. But the Wolfman is different. He likes the fear of his prey. He likes the pain he can inflict. He leaves a mark when he has found someone he likes, and then he will return to claim his kill. The best way to stay safe is to stay around other people. He will stay away from those that walk together." Dylan was a grown man. How could he even think that this could be an option? Still, what explanation was there for what had been happening the last few nights? He pondered for hours until the sun was starting to set. Weird. Bruce and Port never stayed out all day. They should have been home hours ago, scratching at the door to be let in. He opened the front door and started calling out their names. It got dark quick out in the woods, and soon he could barely see a few feet ahead of himself. Dylan went to the back door to see if yelling out in the opposite direction would catch the dog's attention. He opened the back door and opened his mouth to holler when he let his mouth fall shut. There was a large figure laying still in the snow. Was the mystery creature crouched and ready to pounce? Dylan moved a shaking hand up and turned on the back light. He screamed. Piled on the snow were the mangled and bloody bodies of Bruce and Port. He stood frozen, in shock, until movement farther out caught his eyes. There was a dark figure slowly walking closer to the light. He couldn't make out details, but he noticed a couple of things. One, the figure was huge, easily 10 feet tall. And two, it had an odd gait that Dylan had never seen a creature have before. And when he heard the loud, guttural growl, he quickly slammed the door shut. The figure barreled at the door, causing a crack in it immediately. A couple more pushes and the door would give way. And Dylan didn't even think. He grabbed his keys and ran through his house and through the front door. He made it to his truck, and when he heard the back door splinter open, he put the keys in the ignition and started the truck up, hitting the gas with all of his might. The truck had moved about 10 feet when he heard the sound of claws scraping against metal at the back of his truck, as if it was trying to grab it. He had just made it. Dylan looked in his rearview mirror for only a second as he sped away. The sight of the creature would forever be in his nightmares. The creature was pitch black and seemed to be made of pure muscle. There was blood on its muzzle where long sharp teeth were bared into a snarl. But It was its eyes, those red eyes, unforgiving eyes, that truly shook Dylan to the bone. He looked forward and never looked back. "10 years later, and Dylan worked as a mechanic in a suburban town. His wife and 2 kids knew that he had once lived in Black Lake, but he refused to ever talk about his life there. His youngest son was going through a phase where he was scared of monsters. "Silly Brandon," his oldest Todd said. "Monsters aren't real, right, Dad?" he said, looking up at his father. Dylan smiled and nodded. And neither noticed that his smile had never reached his eyes. Wow, 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 wow. And another one. Wow. Absolutely chest-pounding, nail-biting stuff there from the incredible minds of both authors. Of course, please do take a second to check out their Reddit links, of which I'll leave the link in the description box below. As ever, please do let us know what you thought down below in the comments box. Please do like and share. It really does help build the channel and our community further. And why not hashtag TeamFEAR. Of course, as ever, I hope you're all well and happy and keeping focused and fit. But above all, remember, be safe, not sorry.